Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody in the franchising world. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where in the world you are, and whether you're tuning in live here on Blog Talk Radio or downloading the podcast from iTunes. Wherever you are in the world, though, this is your host, Stan Friedman, welcoming you to Franchise Today and sharing with you that my co-host, Paul Segreto, whose melodious tones usually open up the podcast, will not be joining us today as Paul's recovering from a little extensive dental surgery that took a little bit more out of his mouth than what he thought was going to be the case. And so Paul, probably a little bit sedated today, but we all wish you the best and hope that you recover quickly and without too much pain. Before we get into the front of the house and today's guest, Jen Lemcke, COO of Friedman USA, I want to take a moment to thank Kevin Lathrop, president of Unishippers, for his terrific interview last week. As we pointed out during the podcast last week, it's just not every day that people wake up in the morning and say, gee, I think I'm going to go buy a franchise today. Much less, gee, I'm going to wake up and want to get into the logistics business and ship freight around the world, and I wonder if there's a franchise that does that. We learned a ton from Kevin last week about his business model, and as is typically the case here with us each week on Franchise Today, we try to bring those to the audience that have something to tell of a story that shares how franchise is not just about the things we think about daily like fast food, but how many brands there are out there and how many opportunities for sustainable long-term growth exist in concepts like Unishippers. And I'm sure that today we're going to dive a little more deeply into the similar conversation when we learn how pulling weeds and taking care of lawns can deliver sustainable growth for both the franchisor, sub-franchisors, and franchisees as well, as we get into today's conversation with Jen Lemcke, COO of Friedman, which is coming up in just a few minutes. But first, a couple of things to take off the bucket list from the front of the house. A little bit of news that I'd like to share as IFA proudly rolled out their At Our Franchise Tour in Denver, Colorado this past week. For more than 50 years, IFA has been committed to business growth in Colorado, and the state is home to more than 500,000 franchise jobs served. So as the IFA thought about where to kick off the At Our Franchise Tour, while I might have made the argument that Atlanta being home to more franchisor HQs in the U.S. than any American city, Denver always plays a close second, so I suppose it was appropriate that Denver, Colorado was the place that the IFA chose to kick off the campaign. You can learn a lot about the At Our Franchise concept and what it's doing to spread word around the country about local stories and franchisee successes. Just go to Google and look it up with At Our Franchise and at ourfranchise.com, and you can learn a great deal more about some of the wonderful and incredible success stories that are being shared on a day-to-day basis globally, but here in the U.S. especially, as IFA continues to pound the drum of the good news and the great voice of success that we all don't hear enough of when we hear too much about government intervention instead as pertains to franchising. I've made it a practice, too, for the past several weeks to call out and highlight IFA veterans in franchising who each week VetFran is focused, or VetFran is featured in either the Smart Brief or in the IFA Insider, and they highlight and showcase a veteran franchisee of the week, and I do the same here. So this week we want to celebrate Barry Kantner, IFA's VetFran program celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, recognizing franchised veterans, and this week's Barry Kantner of Five Star Painters in Spokane, Washington is in the spotlight. He served in the U.S. military for 4 years as a satellites operations and communications specialist, and Barry says, I encourage all veterans to be diligent and have a plan in place before you jump into the commitment of franchising, but a happy franchisee he is. And you can find out more about Barry about 5-star in their commitment to VetFran or VetFran itself at the IFA's website at franchising.org. Another call out today is for somebody that I have a personal attachment to. I saw this in the Smart Brief, how college hunks hauling junk have grown their business through franchising. Franchising helped college hunks hauling junk grow and start up in Washington, D.C. to a concept that now includes 1,000 employees and operates in more than 35 states. Co-founder Nick Friedman, no relation to me, but for years have I ever had fun, as myself, Nick Friedman, Phil Friedman, and Matt Friedman have always found each other at conferences all over the world or all over the country and have had fun with people thinking that I was Matt's dad and Nick was Matt's brother and Phil Friedman must be everyone's uncle. So we've had fun with this for years, but it's been tons of fun for me to personally know Nick Friedman for years, watch him from the early days of starting the brand with Omar Solomon and being on Shark Tank and just developing and growing their concept. The one thing I didn't know about them was that they were both, as a Washington Post article calls to my attention this week, the writer in the article that wrote about them referred to them as two sons of privilege, in that the both of them, Nick and Omar, went to school with Chelsea Clinton in Washington as kids. I didn't know that, but I will tell you what I do know about Nick and about college hunks. These guys are as passionate about their business as franchisors as anybody could be as a franchisor or a franchisee. And for the Washington Post to have written about them not once but twice, it just tells me that eyes are on these guys as young franchisors to watch, and that their business is taking off and really rocketing. And it couldn't have happened to two great guys, two great partners, and another great Friedman. So real proud of you, Nick Friedman, and keep up the great work. And then lastly, in the front of the house, something that Paul touched on last week and I got to read a little bit more about, and I wanted to share with you what I consider to be social franchising on steroids. You might remember last week Paul mentioned that Red Mango Franchising, Dallas, Texas-based concept, gave away a franchise in New York to the Easter Seals, and did so as an extraordinary opportunity for veterans that are served in the Long Island, New York area, said Joe Giannato, Chief Operating Officer of FedCap Rehab Services and of the Easter Seals in New York. So what it looks like is a donation was made that will enable them to set up entrepreneurial training and internship programs on Long Island designed specifically for transitioning veterans who have an interest in owning and managing their own businesses. Now, this Red Mango store will also be used as an extension for their culinary arts training program, and it's going to provide employment and training opportunities for people with disabilities. Now, this goes beyond the pale, because this wasn't just the grant of a new license that they gave to the Easter Seals. The Red Mango North Babylon store has been operating since 2011 and enjoys an annual gross sales revenue of $465,000. So Red Mango Franchising is handing over not just a license for a franchise and an opportunity, but they're handing over $465,000 in gross sales and all of the costs in excess of $400,000 to build that store. I mean, everything with a zero balance, waiving all franchise fees, including royalties and advertisings normally associated with a franchise's transfer of ownership. This is an amazing story. And when Paul gets back, I know that I'm going to be real interested in trying to secure an interview with Red Mango to talk more about this, because when you talk about a socially, morally responsible franchisor and their commitment to veterans and to doing the things that some franchisors will give away a license, these guys are giving away operating revenue in an actual brick-and-mortar store. I can't think of a better definition of doing well by doing good. So we'll learn more about that, and hopefully we'll have them on to tell us more about what's going on at Red Mango and how their franchisees feel about being involved in that kind of a corporate culture. Today, though, we're going to talk about Weedman. Weedman USA is the nation's leading franchise lawn care provider, and its network of locally owned and operated lawn care businesses provide environmentally responsible fertilization, weed control, and integrated pest management services to families across North America, across the United States, here in Atlanta, where they get a check from me every month, and I'm a proud and happy customer, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. But Weedman USA is a company that was founded more than 45 years ago in Canada, and Jen Lemcke's dad brought the concept to the U.S. in 1996 through a licensing agreement as Turf Holdings Incorporated. They began awarding franchises in 2000, and in 2015, just last year, Weedman's USA revenue surpassed $83 million with a 13% increase over the prior year and expanded into 40-plus new territories. Today, the company has more than 450 territories throughout the U.S., and it expects to increase system-wide sales by at least 15% again this year. Jen Lemcke, quite a tall order. You're running a very successful-sounding ship, and welcome to Franchise Today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Stan.
So I'm really interested in diving into a couple of different things about your concept and about what it does that's unique and different to help consumers stay as loyal as they appear to be to your brand. But before we dive into Weedman, I want to learn a little bit more about you, Jen, because in some of the material that I read in preparation for today's interview, I read that you had pledged more than once that while your dad might have thought otherwise about getting you involved in the business, you had told him repeatedly you weren't going to get involved in this business. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you first and how you got involved in Weedman, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the brand itself.
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of a long but interesting story, and I promise I'm not going to bore you with too many of the details, but my first job ever, when I was actually 12 years old, I started working for our neighbor who owned a Weedman franchise here in Canada, and quickly realized it wasn't going to be for me, and that's actually how my dad got involved with Weedman. He was a chemical engineer with Union Carbide, and he started to hang out with our neighbor, and he would, during the summer evenings, disappear down in the basement and look at the books and thought, geez, with this small business, you can make X amount of dollars. What would happen if we grew this concept? And he decided to buy his first franchise when I was 16 years old. So if you can imagine, we were living in Toronto, and he came home. He had a high-paying job with Union Carbide, was doing exceptionally well, and said, we're picking up. We're moving to the Ottawa area, which is our nation's capital, and when you're 16, the last thing you want to do is leave your friends. So Right. It was a difficult move for me, and he embarked with his first franchise in Hull, Quebec. We were actually the first French speaking, in Quebec. So it was predominantly French in the area. So just to give you a little geography, Ottawa is our nation's capital. Just on the other side is the province of Quebec, and we were in Gatineau, Elmer, Hull, and that's where we opened up our first franchise. So my dad did extremely well in that first year, and at that time I was somewhat involved, just doing a little bit of part-time, doing some mall shows, home shows, a little bit of data entry back in the day, but not very involved, and I continued on with my schooling and met my husband at university and really had no intentions, in fact, as you said, and emphatically said that this is not something that I ever wanted to do, and was studying political science at the University of Ottawa. So as I had met my husband, and he came from a background of entrepreneurs. Both his parents were entrepreneurs at heart, one in real estate and the other in construction. So he was, our interests, our conversations around the dinner table began to change to me, us kind of sitting in the background watching my parents kind of flourish. They were on their second franchise acquisition, and we're doing extremely well with that. And my dad approached us and said, we would love for the two of you to get involved in the business. And, here's kind of what I'm thinking. And his expansion plans were in the Ontario marketplace, where there was some franchisees that were, of size that maybe had bought a franchise and had decided that it wasn't for them anymore. So there was a few franchises being sold as a resale. So that's what we did. We ended up buying the Ottawa franchise, and that's where Chris and I started. And our very good friends of ours, in fact, our best man in our wedding, started our Scarborough office for us. So we did a few acquisitions. And since that time, across Canada, we've bought, I'd say here in Canada, about 45 franchises and amalgamated them into what we call our corporate offices. So in Canada, we are actually a franchisee, and I was very deep in operations with my husband. So we ran the Ottawa branch, I guess, for about 6 years. And we grew that we bought an existing franchise. It was about $250,000 in operations at the time when we purchased it, and we grew it to $2 million within the 6 years. So just really learned the business from the ground up. So I don't think there's a position in the company that I haven't done or my husband hasn't done, and we were truly a team building it together. So our Toronto office was growing and needed a bit of help, so we were transferred to our Toronto branch to help our team there. And from that, this is all the while we were looking at expansion in the United States. So there was one franchise there in the Rochester, New York area, but that was the only one. It was a joint venture with the founder, Des Rice, and they were running that together, but the rest of the United States was wide open. So in 1996, my dad approached Des Rice and purchased the master rights to franchise in the United States. So that first year, we had budgeted to sell 3 franchises. Sorry, I need to back up for a sec. When we did that, we opened up a couple of satellite offices just to see, what kind of the marketplace was in the United States. And that's when we soon realized for us to be successful in the United States, we needed to get like-minded individuals, and we created the sub-franchise opportunity. So, to stay really tried and true to Des Rice's vision of franchising, and the reason why he decided to take the concept and franchise it here in Canada to begin with was the customer service, to be true to the customer. And the way we look at our franchisees is they are truly our customers. So to be able to service them and be able to understand the U.S. marketplace, that's where we brought in the concept of sub-franchising. And with that,
we're going to hold off on
okay.
We're going to dive into that a little bit further into our conversation, but I really want to unpack more about you and your philosophy and what you bring to the business, and let's make sure that we clearly understand so that in Canada you're a franchisee and Des Rice still runs the business?
Actually, his wife is running the business. Des passed away a few years back, but Brenda is quite active in the business and is our franchisor in Canada.
So Des has gone on to greener pastures and is probably running a Canada or a franchise above and looking down on all of us, proud as he can be.
Yeah, he was quite the character.
In Canada, then, you operate as franchisees, and your dad is still deeply involved in the business in Canada, operating in the company stores, I guess. And then your focus has moved purely to the franchising side of the business, and we'll come into that in a little while. But we want to talk more first about whether it's in Canada or the U.S. Let's talk about the brand, and let's learn a little bit about the points of differentiation in your space, because my observation, and I do this as a consumer because I am a customer of yours, I notice the things that I do whenever I see a weed man truck or I see somebody servicing a lawn. It just looks like a big national company in a world of people that are very, very fragmented in that space. It, to me, is, there's a zillion people in that business that are people who either lost jobs or went into business and hung a shingle for themselves. Seems like a very fragmented market segment, and that you've taken and brought structure to that kind of a fragmented segment of the market. So let's talk about the consumer's perspective on that and how you go to market, and how do you make the consumer quickly understand the difference between a man in his van and what Weed Man looks like when they come to the door?
Sure. I think the brand, we really stand out amongst the brand, and I think our brand colors, you probably see the green and yellow really stand out. With a lot of people in our industry use white trucks with their logos on the side. So it was really important when Des first started. So it's modeled after a dandelion. So if you think of the yellow top and the green bottom of the dandelion, so that's something that we feel is, it's been tried right from the beginning. We've never deferred from that. And our name, we have a lot of people make fun of the name, but it's memorable. And, a lot of people don't realize that the name is actually, we were named by kids. And when Des first started, he would arrive in a neighborhood and the kids would say, "Hey, Mom, the Weed Man's here." And it just kind of stuck. So that's hence the name Weed Man, and we've heard it all across the board. But and then the distinctive brand colors and the all of our material running from that and whatnot. So those are kind of the overall things. But I think our strategy in the U.S. has never been to defer from quality, and we do have some really good competitors at a national level. Obviously, the True Greens of the world, and the Lawn Doctors, and the Spring Greens, and a lot of the brands that are out there are very, very good brands. And I think between us and some of our competitors, I would probably boil it down to our fertilizer. We're extremely committed to the quality of fertilizer that we use. And that's been a staple, is to never sway away from that, no matter what. And, some of in 2008 when we had the economic crunch come down, that was something that, was brought up, and we just said, no, we will never defer. We will never change our program, the fertilizer being our most important. So we put down quality, golf course quality grade of fertilizer. And then our commitment to service, which, is giving 24, 48-hour service guarantees to our customers. So if somebody has a weed or something they're unsure about on their lawn, is making sure that we're available to get to the homeowner as quickly as possible to their concerns, which is something in our industry that is not common practice, I would say. Sometimes you can wait up to a week to get somebody to come out and look at an issue on your lawn. So that was something that we really wanted to be above anyone else, is to be very, very committed to a service guarantee and create systems to allow our franchisees and our employees to be able to execute on that. So the worst thing you can do is create a guarantee but not being able to execute. So that was very important, to keep things simple but allow, alert our employees right away when a concern comes in from a customer. So I think the quality of our products and the dedication to customer service has been what's helped us grow in the eyes of the consumer.
Do you guys provide any seasonal services so that in markets where, there's especially in the northern U.S., where you have a limited spring and summer season, do you find your franchisees making the most of their opportunities at the consumer level during a short season of the year, or are there year-round services that you provide as well, even in the winter months?
Well, that's a good question. We have a few franchisees that own landscaping companies as well. So under their other brands, they would offer, landscaping services. So in the winter months would include snow removal. And we've got actually quite a few franchisees that are also do Christmas decorating throughout the winter months, the put up and the take down. But a lot of our franchisees just focus in and take the time. We're marketing. We start marketing January through to March, and then we're out on the lawns quite often, in March, in the northern market, March, April timeframe, depending on the season. And by the time we're off the lawns, it's November. We take November to clean equipment, to do all of the maintenance on the equipment. Extremely important to be able to keep the trucks in good condition so that they're able to service when it's time to service the lawns. We do budgeting, and that's probably some of the business aspects. I know we're going to touch that in a different segment in the call, but our business planning is unreal. It's top of class, not only in our industry, but top of class in probably most industries. We do zero-based budgeting with our franchisees. We do a business plan with each and every one of our franchisees, and it's the crux of all of our systems that we roll from. So it is cultural, which is important. And so November we spent a good part of the time closing up the books, getting our budgets done. And then December, holiday time. In the northern markets, our southern guys are 12 months of the year, and they're going, they may take a couple of weeks off for holidays, but that's about it.
So we'll get into unpacking more about the business side and the sub-franchising and the zero-based budgeting when we come back after our half break. But on the consumer side, I want to just get a better understanding of what the loyalty factor looks like from a consumer, and how do you market to the consumer and just help them feel the difference between professional services offered versus, that guy with the white van that you talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see some of our competitors with some of the retention rates. We have, on average, our franchisees are renewing between 75 to 80%. So that's one of the highest in the industry, the way we measure it, and it's been. So we're very focused on keeping the customer. We pay, a lot. Our franchisees pay a lot in the different marketing avenues that we do. We've been very, very focused on acquiring customers, going to them. Back in the day it was through telemarketing. Now we do door-to-door sales to capture. We do a lot of referrals of our existing customers. We'll refer other customers, and we'll do some promotional things and whatnot. But now things are changing. Technology is changing. The consumer's buying differently. So there's been a huge focus for us here at head office to really come up with systems and plans to be more prominent on the Internet, and building systems to help our franchisees close inbound calling quicker, easier, faster, and deliver the information that the consumer needs. We've really changed the tide where a consumer would call in and say, I would like a quote, and the expectation you'd be there within the day or the next day to deliver a quote. Now when somebody calls in for a quote, they want it now. They're not willing to wait a couple of days. So just building those systems to be able to deliver what the consumer wants. So, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the one I try to see if I could bait you to go where I see Weedman and your marketing working more effectively than almost anything I can think of. And in my part of the world in Atlanta, we are almost a 12-month-a-year kind of an opportunity for you in the South. Something that families do 2 or 3 times a day in my neighborhood is somebody's out walking the dog. Mm-hmm. And the thing I remember most about Weedman that I am impressed by is the little sign that you put in the lawn after it's been treated, reminding me to keep my pet off that grass for 24 hours. So you're looking out for pet owners. Mm-hmm. And when I read that sign, I also read something about a referral, like $25 or something that somebody can save if I refer you to somebody. So those are 2, I think, the least expensive little things sometimes can wind up being the most memorable and important things to someone, because you're looking out for my pet and me and my wallet, and you're helping me look out for someone else's wallet. So I get a gift for giving you the referral, and the new customer gets $20 or $25 off of their first treatment, and all of that because I was noticing on a sign that I shouldn't let my dog walk on that grass so that my pet doesn't get hurt either. I mean, how much better does it get than that?
Yeah, referrals have definitely been a huge space for us, and we really help coach our franchisees capitalize on that. Every time you talk to somebody, ask for a referral. The signs are a great example of that, and you know what better testimonial from a customer when they're referring their friends and family to come to the company. And so that's a space where we're growing tremendously.
That's great. We're talking with Jen Lemcke, COO of Weedman USA, and I might point out to you that I had a thought before I wasn't going to share it, but then I got a text from Paul who was thinking the same thing I was. We were talking about the northern states and the seasonality. We were talking about Colorado at the beginning of the program when I was talking about the IFA initiative. And then we're talking about Weedman being named by kids, and we're thinking that in places like Denver, Weedman could have a whole different meaning, but we're just not going to go there today, are we?
Thank you.
This is Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman, and I'm flying solo today as Paul's recovering from a rough visit to the dentist, but we wish you the best, Paul. Hope you get over the pain and the anguish pretty quickly. My guest today is Jen Lemcke, COO of Turf Holidings, the U.S. franchisor of Weedman USA. Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering best-in-class CRM and content management software designed specifically for managing franchise relationships. Built in industry-leading Microsoft Dynamics CRM, these solutions are both cloud-based as well as fully accessible from right inside the Outlook inbox. With FRM, you'll spend more time focused on the business of building top and bottom line growth, while FRM assists with effectively managing communications and collaboration with prospective and existing franchisees. Franchisors, you can sort, report, and dashboard all of your vital data and empower your teams to accelerate franchise sales, streamline store openings, and better manage your processes, workflows, unit-level performance, and compliance. No hassles, no long-term contracts, no excuses, just solutions on the web at frmsolutions.com. Franchise Today also brought to you by the Franchise Foundry, a business accelerator boasting more than 30 years of experience helping emerging brands bring sustainable growth to their franchise systems. Utilizing a hybrid coaching and consulting approach, the Foundry team fosters the development and deployment of effective short- and long-term solutions for their clients in several key areas of their business, including franchise management and ops, change management, traditional and digital marketing and technology, relationship and business management, and, of course, franchise recruitment and development. The Franchise Foundry also assists franchise brands with raising capital and with the exploration of merger and acquisition opportunities. To learn more about their expanding list of clients across various industry segments, go to franchisefoundry.com. That's www.franchisefoundry.com for Paul Segreto's Franchise Foundry. So, Jen, I had to back you off a couple of times. You were trying to pop the clutch on talking about the business side of the business. Now it's time to let it loose. And let's talk about Weedman as a franchise concept and how you've approached the development of the U.S. with the sub-franchisor model in further developing and converting independent people to your brand and bringing others aboard that are coming back for second bites of the apple, which is always the best testament to me about the success of a brand is when an existing operator comes back and says, can I get some more? Let's talk about the business model.
Yeah. When we started in franchising in 1996, as I was saying before, really it was just test markets. So when we came up with the sub-franchise concept, it was in 1999, and at that time we had budgeted to sell 3 sub-franchisors and sell 3 franchises. What ended up happening that first year, and I remember I had just moved to the Toronto franchise, but so as we launched the U.S., we actually sold 7 sub-franchisors and 28 franchises. So it was, my dad came into my office and sat down and said, I think we're going to need some help on the U.S. side. Would you be willing to help out? And I said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I can remember our first group that came through training. He came in and he says, by the way, you've got a day that you're going to have to tell them everything you know on operations and let the franchisees know, what you know. So it was very, I was almost in shock. So To know me, I am an incredibly organized person, and I probably didn't sleep for a couple of days when he told me that. So, and I'm also been deemed the binder queen and Excel spreadsheet queen. So I started hurriedly making binders and, getting them to be able to organize their office and how that was all going to look and what were all the reports that they needed to look at and, how are they going to answer their phones and what that's all going to look like and doing business plans and how we're going to track their success on their marketing side. So really putting that all together. In that first training, I can remember I spoke so fast, and I'm known to do that working with these guys. But those franchises, each and every one of them, that first year when we first launched the sub-franchise concept, both the subs and myself, I think I spent more time on the road than I did at home that first and second year. It was just such an unbelievable undertaking because not only was I training the new franchises, I was also training the sub-franchisers to essentially do what I do in the support of franchises. So it really built some very deep friendships and relationships with this sub-franchise group, which we call them sub-franchisers, but really they're our partners. And we work so closely with the sub-franchisers. They're just an extension of our head office. So anything we roll out, they have flagship offices, and we roll it out through their flagships. We test it. We, change it if we need changing. We tweak it. We do all the things. We create all the reporting capabilities, and then we roll it out to the franchisees. So there's this. There's been a trust that's been built up with our franchisees, and I think coming to our annual conference, people I don't think believe the culture that we have, and I tell them we're hugging and crying and laughing and we're just a family, and it truly is exactly that. And we are and I would say that would be the crux of our success has been the people that we've gotten involved and the relationships that have been created through that. And there was times when we were rolling out things and people weren't seeing results right away. They trusted us enough to believe that, we just needed to persevere and push through and tweak and continue to work together to get those results. And now, like you said, when people start buying more and more territory, that that they're successful. Franchisees, they're happy when they're successful, and that's been something that we've always kept in front of us. When we roll things out, we're not just looking at branding, we're looking how is this going to impact the bottom line of our franchisees. And it was very, very important for us to always show value to the things that we were doing for the franchisees. And we don't hit home runs all the time, but that trust has earned us the ability to get a little bit of leeway from our franchisees as well. So,
well, trust is earned. It's not something that's an entitlement. So your culture breeds that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how many sub-franchisors comprise the U.S. marketplace. I saw a listing someplace in my research, and it struck me that you've got very, very broad and large sub-franchise territories. Is that correct?
It is. We started off, initially when we decided to go to that concept, we had subdivided the U.S. into 18 sub-territories. We initially sold 13 of those 18 and subsequently have bought 3 of those back and are now working with 7 individuals across the U.S. So I'd say just a little over 50% of the U.S. is done through the sub-franchise group, and the rest of the U.S. is done directly with Turf Holdings, Inc., and we have a support team here that have actually grown up in operations through the Canadian operations.
Are there any common denominators that you could point to that are consistent across the population of your subs, prior experience or industries that they've come from?
Yeah, they've all come from what I would call, the majority of them have come from the green industry, which is the landscaping, lawn care, industry. So they're people that had, and then we have one that came from the pest control industry. So they were people that actually were in lawn care and had sold out to either Scott's or True Green, some of the big players in our space, and had gone through the non-compete. And the timing when we came into the marketplace was right at the end of a lot of the non-competes that had transpired. So when we came into, timing is everything, when we came out in 99 with this concept, we were approaching people that were, either looking at going to work for a vendor potentially and use their knowledge that way. But what better way than to get back in the industry and actually mentor other people to grow million-dollar businesses? So
Sure.
It was really attractive to some of these guys where they could kind of go beyond just being a mom and pop in their local marketplace. They could bring in, and I shouldn't say local mom and pop because these were in their own rights, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million lawn care operations. But what better way than for them to be able to share how they did it and share their story with others?
I think you hit the nail on the head on the reason why it works with your brand, whereas in so many U.S. concepts that I've seen sub-franchising employed as the model, success has not been so rich. And I think part of it has to do with the size of territories that an area developer or sub-franchisor might acquire isn't large enough to really share the royalty stream between home office and the operating entity that is the area developer or the sub-franchisor. Mm-hmm. And two, I think sometimes some of those people don't come with the skill sets of scaling a business and operating as a support mechanism, not just as the operator. And it would seem that with companies that had operations that sold out and then later became franchisees of yours that were doing multi-million-dollar revenues, they probably brought with them some of the leadership skills that are required to not just operate but to lead people in operations as well. And that to me is the key in successful area development or sub-franchising. It sounds like you guys have that all figured out.
Yeah, and when we came together as a group, we had the systems in place because we had ran, Weedman, and we understood all of that. And with my father's engineering background, he built all of the tools for business planning, tracking marketing. I mean, we are a statistics guru. We are extremely, extremely attentive to details as far as our data. I mean, to nauseam. We do data management. So that we were able to teach the subs that, but they already knew the business side. They already knew, the agronomics. They already understood how to fertilize, how to do weed control. So showing them how to use our systems was kind of the easy part. They were already there culturally in their head on what to do. So it just was a great fit for us. And as I say that, that's kind of what we look for in a franchisee, somebody that's going to fit us as far as our culture, and for us to fit them. We really look at the relationship with the franchisee as truly that, our relationship, and both parties need to feel comfortable with the relationship and the partnership moving forward. So as we talk to franchisees, and I know this is going to sound like a cliche, we're really looking for the right fit, and we don't sell them the franchise. We consult with them. What is currently your experience? What is currently your situation? Will a spouse be involved? Will the spouse not be involved? Which sometimes is even more difficult when they're seeing their spouse working all of these hours, and what are they working towards? And making sure that we tell them that it's important to keep them part of the decision process. So our tactics in developing the U.S. has been very deliberate in what we're doing, and I think it shows with the type of people that we've gotten on board.
Are you at corporate or at the home office for Weedman USA? Are you doing the franchise development with or for your sub-franchisors? How much do each of you participate in the process of the selection of new franchisees?
That's a great question. So in the areas where the sub-franchisor is a sub-franchisor, so let's take our Steve Russell. He is the sub-franchisor for Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky. He also has Tennessee and Southern Illinois under another subgroup. They decided to expand. So with that, in those areas, his responsibility as a sub is to develop that area, meaning he will award the franchisees from start to finish. And then we train them. So we do the initial training of the franchisee, and then in the end, we then send them back to the sub-franchisor, and they are responsible to support them locally.
Now, you called out those two specific geographies. Does it work differently in other areas?
No, well, just because the Russells, they're brothers that decided to expand, and there was different shareholders amongst the two organizations. But, another gentleman is Phil Fogarty, and he is Ohio, Western PA, and Western New York is his area. So, some areas are larger. We base the sale of it on population, but typically it was entire states, or sometimes it was half states, depending on population of that state.
Right, but then at that level, so those sub-franchisors have acquired the rights to support the network and to work with franchisees that are flying your flag in those geographies, but are they bringing in individual units, or are these sub-franchisors actually operating and running the business in those areas?
Both. So in the case of Phil, he has a franchise in Cleveland, and he has people running that for him, and then he has individual franchisees that he is not has any part of the ownership whatsoever, and he supports those as well. So to answer, it's both. He has what we would call a flagship office in his territory, and then he would also have franchisees under him.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the process for selection, and I know that some of your expansion has come from those second bites even at the unit level, right, where franchisees may have acquired a smaller territory and then come back for more. And what about those from other types of independent businesses that are in allied or similar types of businesses running and operating independently, or in businesses to the left or right that Weedman USA might make a good bolt-on to their home services business of another sort? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. So the selection process, we really, our marketing that we do, I had the great pleasure to meet with a gentleman from the Dwyer Group a few years back called Ron Madera, and he was the president of Grounds Guys, and met him at a Green Industry Expo, and he was great, and we took him to dinner, and we sat down and kind of welcomed to the industry, and asked him what were plans for developing a franchise unit for the grounds guys in our industry. And he said, well, next year we're going to sell 56 units. And I said, okay, how that number, how 56? And he essentially went on to tell me how they were going to tackle and expand and sell those 56 units. So I said, that sounds great, and would you be willing to allow me to come down and visit the Dwyer Group and see, kind of how you do your marketing and your franchise development? He said, absolutely. So I owe a lot of what we do to the Dwyer Group. They are just a phenomenal group. And they opened their doors, and I left there, I swear to you, I had 40 pages of notes, and just from start to finish. And then I think Ron is subsequently, he's retired, and I think I may have helped put him into retirement. I called him so many times after our visit, and then tracked him down at the IFA, and then tracked him down again at the Green Industry. I think he thought I was stalking him. But, he shared so many things with us, and they do a lot by telemarketing. And, I grew up in the business. Telemarketing doesn't scare me at all. I understand the numbers behind telemarketing. So B2B was something that we did. So we targeted people in our industry, meaning landscapers that might not have lawn care as part of their portfolio that they were offering. So we did that. And with the brand recognition that Weedman had already in the industry, we weren't talking to people that were not familiar with us, or at least heard of us, or had seen us at some point or another. So we did a lot of that. We did a lot of sponsorships within the industry, a lot of educational sponsorships, just so that people knew that if we called or if we send a mail out to them that they might open it. So we really supported the industry, and we do a lot of speaking within the industry just to help on education, both in the landscaping, lawn care, pest control. Golf course superintendents is another one that we have. We really, believe in expanding the education in our industry. So that has been kind of our two-prong approach, really supporting the industry at sponsorship level, education level, and then targeting direct marketing to certain individuals in certain markets that we really want to target. And the Dwyer Group really helped us kind of establish that methodology. So with that, that was really how we acquired a lot of our new franchises. And then, of course, we started to see success and started recognition, with Forbes recently, CNBC, the IFA. We're now starting to get a lot more from outside the industry that are looking at the opportunity as a viable opportunity to, leave their current career and join us. And the funny thing is, in Canada, we had nobody from the industry. Everyone are, lawyers and doctors and accountants that have bought Weedman franchises. So we knew that day was going to come, and it started over the last couple of years. And then finally, we've really been deliberate about our expansions, very, very deliberate. We identified people that we felt were in a place the same place we were here in Canada. We're a very large multi-unit franchisee in Canada, and we knew that once you get to a certain level, there's differences in managing a business, and when you get to that certain level, you need additional things. So when you get to $1 million, running a $100,000 franchise is very different than running $1 million and then a $2 million and $3 million and beyond. Sure. And it's all about people. It's management and people are truly your biggest factors that you struggle with. And it's just not even franchising. It's not unique to franchising. It's just in the business world per se. And you need a different types of skill set. You need to hire different types of people, or you need to acquire them. So we created what we call our multi-unit training, where we bring our franchisees that we feel are at a size. They have the bench strength available to continue to grow and have the financial resources, and we show them what it could look like in a multi-unit type situation. And what that allows the franchisee to do, so we do what we call a 10-year plan with them, and the 10-year plan would show them if they did an acquisition, what that would look like, if they went into a new field, what that would look like. And then they can start to identify areas that they might be interested in. And what that allows them to do is go back to their offices and share it with their employees, and we give them org charts, and it's specific to their particular situation. And now when you have employees that might be thinking, geez, there's not much place for me to grow here, I'm going to start to look elsewhere, you're able to put that carrot out and allow them to start to see a future. This is not just a job now. This could be a career. And we strongly encourage our franchisees, as you look at these multi-units and you start to look at getting your employees involved, is creating a share purchase opportunity. And we show them how to do that and how to structure that, or partnerships with their employees to grow the brand into different locations. So we've actually been able to help some of our existing franchisees' employees become owners with their current ownership group. So it's just been so much fun to work with the franchisees, and I think we've had a unique ability to do that because I grew up, my dad's been brought up in a world where I live and breathe Weedman because I've been in operations. I know what it's like to gain a customer, lose a customer, and everything that happens in between, and what it's like to manage at different levels of business. So we're able to impart that because we've trailblazed it here in Canada, and it's not very much different in the U.S. So it has helped us we are always in our franchisees' shoes, and we understand what makes them tick and breathe and all of those things, and what makes employees excited to get up in the morning. So growth is where it's at. If you're not growing, you're not creating opportunity, and we understand that very, very well.
If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And I'm just thrilled with your passion for your business as well as your discipline for systems and professional management of the business. We could probably go on for hours, but Blog Talk Radio is probably not going to allow that. So in the little bit of time we've got left, can you tell the audience about any places that are upcoming that you might they may find you, any of the upcoming expos or shows? And if not, then please be certain to share with the audience how they can find you digitally and online.
Yeah, we will be at the Green Industry Expo in October, which is put on by the National Association of Landscape Professionals. So we'll be there. We have a booth. I don't know off the top of my head what our booth number is, but look us up. We will also, you can always find us at weedmanfranchise.com. Again, that's weedmanfranchise.com. And, always please look me up on LinkedIn. My name's Jennifer Lemcke, Lemcke, and we'd love to talk to you about the opportunity and what we're doing here at Weedman.
Awesome. And, it's no coincidence that you brought the Dwyer Group into the conversation today. It's not by design, and some may start to think so if they download enough episodes of Franchise Today from iTunes. I'm almost going to bet you that it's been week after week after week without any rehearsal plan or design that either Paul, myself, or our guests weave something about the Dwyer Group into the conversation, or it's something that's in the news from IFA. It is what it is, isn't it? It's great people that have been cornerstones of franchising, and listening to you talk about them, and without any direct linkage or any direct line to you at all, they do what franchising's all about, don't they? They just help others in the space become better every day as franchisors. So I'm really proud to hear that you've got the Dwyer Group's culture under your umbrella in one way or the other. That's great to hear. And also, no surprise to me that Forbes Magazine has, for the second time, found your brand to be worthy of their best for franchises to buy, and that you're getting the continued recognition in the national media and press. Jen, I want to thank you for being my guest today on Franchise Today and for sharing an hour of your time with the audience, helping them learn a little bit more about how sustainable growth doesn't just happen, but it happens by design, as it does at Weedman USA. Thanks for being our guest today.
Thank you so much, Stan, for your time.
My pleasure. And another great interview. I think that, I don't want to say a great interview, I guess a great bit of information shared in an interview, and we could have gone on for hours. This just exemplifies, again, how many brands out there that are not the ones that just roll off the tip of our tongues every day thinking about franchising, that are doing so many things right. And we thank you, Jen Lemcke, for bringing some of that to the attention of our audience here on Franchise Today. Next week, we've got Alan Young, CEO of another brand that's also in the fast tracks of growth. Barry is the CEO of Noble Brands. You may know them better as Shelf Genie here in Atlanta, recognized as one of the 40 fastest growing companies in Georgia. And we'll be looking forward to our interview with Alan next week. The 17th, we've got Sam Haddock, who's a longtime friend of mine. Sam is developing Costa Vida, and we're going to be talking with Sam about that. And then toward the end of the month, 24th, Tom Lindbergh and Jeff Gill with Sir Grout, and we'll end the month of August with Bill Redfern at Global Franchise Opportunities on the 31st. And I want to just bring to your attention a couple of other dates that are on the calendar here in the dog days of summer. The Faegre Franchise Summit in Minneapolis coming up on August 17th and 18th, and then the Franchise Capital Exchange on the 24th through the 26th in Chicago. That wraps it up for today. I want to thank you all for joining me. Paul, get better. We'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on Franchise Today. And until then, my name is Stan Friedman, wishing you all the best in this great thing we call franchising. And Franchise Today is out.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research the new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.